All right. So I want to take this time to go through generating a 3D model for this is the pen slider block. So this is the final, this is what we're going to kind of end up with. I'm going to take some time and go through the videos and have two. One where we're going to do the general shape, and then the second video we'll finish it off. So just as general, the shape I'm seeing is sort of this kind of shape where we have two blocks together, and then we have some chamfers, we have some fillets. So we're going to start off with looking at this end piece. So the tools I'm going to introduce to you are very interesting, and we'll walk through them one by one. So let's do a new design. So I'm going to do a new design. First thing I'm always going to do is do a new component. With that component name, I'm going to call this the pen slider block. Hit OK. Go there, and then we're going to launch into sketch mode. So I'm going to pick this face here, and then the nice thing is I'm just going to draw some lines, and I'm basically just going to create some lines that roughly approximate what that looks like. And it could be very, very off as long as things kind of match up in this square space. So this drawing is actually probably really rough, but we'll go through one at a time. So the tool we're going to introduce, or the set of tools, is constraints. Constraints we'll introduce more in depth in the next lesson, but they're going to be extremely useful for right now. So a couple of things we're going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is I want to set the center point and kind of the midpoint of this bottom line to be the origin of the drawing. So in order to do that, I'm going to hit my constraints, and then I'm going to go down to midpoint. I'm going to select the midpoint of that line, and I am going to make it coincident with the origin. When I do that, it'll shift the entire drawing over. Now, we're going to do a couple more. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of go out of here and hit OK to escape from that midpoint tool. And then what you see here is I can move around these sketches independently. Don't want to do that. I want these two lines to move together. So I'm going to introduce a constraint to make them collinear. Select collinear, going to select one. Then I'm going to select this one. Oh, it already had it selected. So if I hit OK, then what it's done is now when I move these two together, I'm going to be in good shape. They're going to move both at the same time. The last constraint that I want to introduce is this horizontal vertical. Oh, gotta always have to escape out of your tools. So we'll do constraints, we'll do horizontal vertical, and then we're going to select this guy. Nope. Hello friends. Today we're going to step through a couple of videos for the Trammell toys. We have some tools we're going to get introduced into the next lesson that make life a lot easier now. So I'm going to kind of model some of those uses. This is where we're going to end up. So this is the pen slider block. We will eventually get here. We're going to break this into two videos. The first one is we are going to do the basic shape, and then we'll do the finishing work. So if I take a look at it from the end, you kind of see this rough shape of two boxes that go together, and that's where we're going to start. So I'm going to go ahead and hit new design. When I hit my new design, first thing I'm always going to do is do create new component. I'll call this component the pen slider block. Gotta learn how to correctly spell pen slider block. When we do the pen slider block, we're going to hit OK. Going to go into sketch mode, so create new sketch. I'm going to select this one here, and where we're going to start is I'm going to draw some lines, and what you're going to find out is I can just roughly say I've got a shape that looks sort of like this, and we are going to go through and do some additional steps to make this a lot easier to work with. Okay, so let's just start there. Now, I'm going to do a couple things. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to make this thing centered on the origin. It's going to make things easier in the end. So the first constraint that I want to do is I want to make the midpoint of this line here centered with the origin. And you see how it shifted the entire drawing. Next thing is, and always have to hit OK, escape out of that tool, is you see here, I can move these lines up and down independently. So what I want the drawing to do is I want that drawing to move both at the same time. So the constraint I want to introduce is a thing called collinear. And when I say collinear, I'm going to select that one's already selected. I'm going to select the second one. And now you can see, and I go ahead and right click and hit OK, is that when I move one, they both move at the same time. One last thing that I want to introduce as a constraint is this horizontal vertical. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over here until I get, or actually I have to click Shift key, go over here until I click here, got that, and then I'm going to come down here and click the origin, go ahead and go OK. And so now what you see is that when I move these lines are going to move at the same time. So all of my drawing is now centered on that origin point and can then move up and down. So that's kind of step one, kind of roughed in. Now, this isn't even dimensioned remotely correctly. So what I'm going to start doing is taking a look at my drawing, and then I can dimension these parts and they'll actually start to match the drawing. So I'm going to go look at my drawing, flip over here, and a couple of key things that you want to notice is that the overall height is 0.813 for the entire thing. I have it until 0.375 to the shoulder. If I look at it from the top, I have a distance of 0.141 on each side. And then I also have the overall dimension of 0.734. So take those down. I'm going to go back into my drawing. And then what you'll do is over here, you'll hit Sketch Dimensions. So let's just do a couple of things here. So I mentioned that the height of the shoulder is 0.375. So I can go from here to here for a dimension, click out here, and then put 0.375. Now when I enter, this is going to make it look radically different because I actually don't even know what these dimensions are right now. So if I hit 0.375, yep, it's really far off. All right, so what else do I know? I know that this little ledge here, if we go up here, I know that little ledge is going to be 0.141, 0.141. All right, that's making a little more sense. I also know that the overall width of this thing is, let's see here, 0.734, 0.734. Hit enter. Okay, so it's looking roughly right. Now, last thing we have here is what's the overall height. And the overall height, let's see here, go back to my drawing. What is the overall height? Didn't write that down. 0.813. Actually, I think I did. So go here, click here, and say 0.813. Hit enter, and then all of a sudden, yep, everything's looking like it should. So let me take one last look at that drawing. Yep, everything's good to go. All right, so now if you kind of playing along, I set the origin to the center. I set these collinear lines so I move them up and down, and then I set the other last constraint with this horizontal vertical by selecting the midpoint of this line and then the center point at the origin. Okay, hit Finish Sketch, and so now I have that block finished up. Okay, so now we're going to go into the extrusion. So I'm going to pick that sketch. I'm going to go into the extrusion phase here. Do this symmetrical. Got it down to a distance. Distance is going to be 1.75. And we'll do that half length. So if you follow along, we did profile plane, we want to do symmetrics, we did distance, we did a half. And what this did is it has centered the bottom of the drawing on the origin. So the absolute bottom of the drawing is the origin at this point. So at that point, I'll finish this video up. And so this is your rough block.